Hi, welcome to Coffee Chats with Impact, the series where I get to have real conversations with resilient people who have overcome the odds to succeed. I'm super excited today, and I'm going to give her a drum roll because she likes a drum roll. My guest today is the amazing Lucy, and I'm going to check, I should have checked before we got on live. Is it Olphert? How do I pronounce your last name? I'm already worried about that.
Don't worry, everyone struggles with it. Olphert.
Thank you. So, my amazing guest
It's Irish.
Lucy. Yay. I've known Lucy for a number of years, so I'm really honoured to have her on this chat with us today. The purpose of this series was to inspire you, to uplift you, and to make you hungry to live your life that you deserve. And Lucy does that so much. So I've got some information here about Lucy, and I'm going to read my little piece of paper because I don't want to miss any of the magic that she has created in this world. So let's get started. So Lucy describes herself as unashamedly passionate when it comes to a holistic approach in life. She has a many list of achievements. She is an international equestrian show jumper who has taken out the 100,000 visa MX Classic in Mexico. She is a guide for the Achilles International Foundation, which is a foundation that empowers people of all types of disabilities to participate in mainstream running events. She has co-founded the Global Amateur Tour, which provides amateur show jumpers worldwide opportunities to experience the excitement, the adrenaline, and the professionalism of competing on the international stage. On top of that, as she's growing her business, Lucy received an amazing scholarship opportunity from the University of Waikato, which had her graduating with a degree in sports and exercise science, majoring in sports and public relations. Lucy shared with me, it hasn't always been easy. There have been some major setbacks along the way, including the unexpected passing of her dad in 2015. And a career-ending injury for one of her students. I love this part. Lucy describes herself as incredibly stubborn, somewhat resilient, and she refuses to give up on her goals. Wow, man, you've achieved so much already. And I suppose people watching us today could see the success and not know I suppose the struggles you've had to overcome besides the one that I've just talked about. And I wanted to kind of, thank you for even giving myself the opportunity to share your achievements and to share with us about the struggles that you had with your dad's passing and one of your students having a career-ending injury. I want to talk about something else that you shared with me, and you shared it actually publicly, which is flipping so vulnerable. And in a world today where people only show us so much of us,
yeah.
And of course, everything on social media is real, isn't it? We don't hear everything that's true.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, me too. Like, actually, got to admit, I do actually share the good and the bad now because I've come to a point where I don't really worry so much about what you think. But you shared publicly that at the age of 21, your body was breaking down and a physio told you had the back of an 81-year-old. So, hearing that news, it would be fair to say your life could have been quite different to what it is today. And I wondered if you could share with us what went through your mind when you were told that. And how did you go from somebody who's just been told, I have a back of an 81-year-old at 21, which is pretty devastating, to then going on and winning the 100,000 visa MX Classic in Mexico? Because those two are like so far apart. Like, could you share with us today? Yeah, so how did you do that?
Yeah, definitely. So I'll just take it back a little bit and just explain sort of what led me, I guess, to that diagnosis at the age of 21. And It came from a German doctor when I was living in Germany. I'd been over there for 3 years pursuing my dream of riding internationally, and the first 3 years, you know, it really was living the dream. I was training and competing alongside people that I'd grown up idolizing. And for me, it felt like I'd just hit the jackpot. But as I'm sure you can imagine, it's, you know, physically it's extremely hard work. And even though I was incredibly fit, I was riding probably somewhere from 10 to 15 horses a day, and I was really, really fit. But it's back-breaking work, literally. And even as a professional rider, there are still duties and tasks involved with working with horses that, you know, off the horse. So things such as mucking out stables or sweeping, you know, and that combined with the riding started to see my body breaking down. I wasn't doing, well, I guess at that point, I didn't really know enough about things like mobility work. I think, you know, the word yoga was probably more thrown out than mobility work. And so the thought of yoga, to me back then, and even still now, it scares me a little bit, because it's sort of, I get this this picture of everything, life going at this very, very slow pace, and I'm not someone who's ever been like that. I do everything 100 miles an hour, and I'm just running in the house and I'm back out, and I'm, you know, one thing to the next. And so yeah, so getting that diagnosis from that doctor, as you can imagine, for a 21-year-old who thinks they're invincible and they live life at a very fast pace, was not something that I really wanted to hear. And he followed it up with a cortisone injection into my back, which, you know, I remember walking out of that clinic literally bent over, and probably in worse shape than when I'd walked in. And I guess I persisted for a couple more months before I realized that, you know, look, this isn't really how I want to live right now. I was, just to get through every day, you know, taking endless amounts of Voltaren and things that really weren't good for my body just to get through. So yeah, it got to a point where I literally couldn't get out of bed. And I guess it was then that I had also started to think, like, what else do I want to do with my life? I don't want to get to the age of 30 and be crippled. And I had actually seen a few of my peers that were in pretty bad shape despite being relatively young. In this sport, you're still young at the age of 50. So, you know, to put it in perspective, some of our Olympians and our most successful riders have been in their 60s and their 70s. Mark Todd is a great example of that. You know, and so I guess to preserve the longevity of my riding career, I made the decision to return home. And I was lucky enough, I got the opportunity to take the Sir Edmund Hillary Scholarship at the University of Waikato. And it was on that scholarship that we were introduced to a high performance training system. And that was where I met a guy who had a very pivotal impact on my life. And his name was Justin Stewart. And he was the one that first sat me down, and he talked to me about the importance, I guess, of cross-training, mobility work. And so we started a strength and conditioning program in the gym. It was the first time I'd ever been in a gym in my life. And initially, it did take me a little bit of time to get my head around it. But once I started to see the results, and I started to learn that you can be fit physically for something, but it doesn't necessarily mean that you're strong and you're balanced and that your body is going to keep up with the demands of the everyday requirements. And within a couple of months, I'd probably gone to 50% less pain. And within about 6 months, I was nearly 100% free. And so I guess, yeah, that was the big shakeup, and something that I've tried to carry on ever since. Now you talked about the class or the event in Mexico last year, which was a considerable highlight for me. Absolutely. But there was more than a 10-year gap since returning home from Europe, taking a scholarship, and then to that event last year. And whilst absolutely, you know, the new training philosophies played a major role in that, I would say that everything that happened within those 10 years, the experiences that I had through university, through setting up my own business, failed relationships, new friendships, travel, everything that sort of happened along that journey, I guess, shaped me into becoming the person that I am now, and maybe to being a more resilient character than I probably was 15 years ago. So I would say, yeah, all of those things. And I think you've mentioned we're going to talk about those later in this chat, but I would say all of those have led me to that point last year where I was lucky enough to come away with that award. Yeah.
Wow. So what I'm hearing you say here is that sometimes we need to, I mean, you could have made a very different choice. You could have just soldiered on because you're with these people who are your idols,
Totally.
these people who you are like looking up to, and you were brave enough and were realizing that you had to pivot, that you had to put sometimes something that you really, really, really want on hold to work on something that might not be where you think your future is going to go. And I would think, would I be right in saying the message is that you actually need to go within to figure that out and listen to your gut in that aspect? Because I love the analogy you just gave, and that's why I went, yoo-hoo, that, you know, in your sport, that people can be in their 50s and 60s and still be professional. So I love the fact that really in your mind, you didn't actually put an age or I'm this, I'm that, that you just believed enough in yourself that I can go and do that and come back.
Yeah. And I think I also knew that I'd got my foot in the door. I knew that the opportunities would still be there. And I guess by that point, I had the courage to walk away from them. Whereas maybe earlier on, 1 or 2 years in, I might not have had the courage to do that, thinking that this might have been my only chance. I think the other thing with this sport, it's a brutal sport, and in many respects, it's a king sport. It is right up there in terms of being incredibly expensive, and unless you've got the finances to fund yourself, you're really at the mercy of riding for other people, which I was. And one of the jobs that I was in, and it was actually at the time when I had the back problems, and I remember crawling off a horse one day, and I said to my boss, I said, look, I don't think I'm going to be able to get on another horse today. And he looked at me and he said, if you're not riding by Monday, this was a Friday, if you're not riding by Monday, find another job. Wow. And that just gives you an idea of how brutal they can be. To them, you're just another number. And you can be doing an amazing job for them and turning over a lot of profit for them, but there's thousands of other people lining up at the door who want your job, and they know that they can fill that job. So for him, he was just being a businessman. But it was that point where I sort of went, I'm going to keep fighting tooth and nail for this. And I get to ride amazing horses. I get to go to amazing competitions. But every time, you never know what point that you've, developed that partnership with is going to be sold. It's all business for them. So if someone makes a good enough offer, that horse is sold and that horse is gone. And then, you're sort of back at the...
Oh, it looks like we might have lost a bit of connection. Let's hope that comes back in a moment. Lucy's wonderful. We lost a fraction of connection there with you.
Oh no!
It's all right. No. We got most of it. There was just a little bit, but obviously with you being, it's snowing where you are at the moment, and we were just praying to the internet gods to behave. But we got most of that part there. I suppose then, like what you've just explained on how it is quite cutthroat, and it's quite, I love your definition, the king sport. So is this one of the reasons that you co-founded your global amateur tour, that you could actually help support up and coming people to kind of deal with more, not just the what is it like, but from a mental headspace place on how to cope with that type of environment? Was that one of the reasons? Like, what was the reason that you decided to go down that avenue?
Yeah, good question. So some of my closest friends that I've met through the sport are amateur riders, and just because you're an amateur rider, it doesn't mean amateur can have different definitions, and amateur sport or amateur riders are not necessarily amateurs because they're not good enough to be professional. Sometimes it's because they've made other decisions. They've got families, or they've got jobs that they just can't give 100% full time to their riding, but they still love the sport and they're still passionate about the sport, and they want to travel and they want to have these international opportunities. But the international opportunities really only lie there for professionals, or for those that are wealthy enough to take their horses to these events around the world. And as you can imagine, just to give you an idea, to transport a horse from New Zealand to Europe, you're looking at around $30,000.
Wow. Okay.
And that's just for one flight, one way. So to transport your horse to, around the globe for these amazing competitions, for many is just not possible. And so I was lucky enough to attend a competition in Germany when I was 15. And at this competition, you were given a borrowed horse, and you competed on this borrowed horse for the tournament. And it was the most unique and fascinating experience. And this challenge of trying to create a bond and a partnership with an animal that you've only known for a couple of days. And so it was through that event and that idea and some of the friends that I made through that event that I'm still very good friends with today. They say all good ideas start over a cocktail, and it really was. We were sitting on a boat. It sounds so sort of dreamy. We were sitting on a boat and off the coast of Cancun in Mexico, and we were trying to come up with ways that we could sort of keep seeing each other throughout the year, not just this one time, this one competition that we'd go to every year. And so that's how the Global Amateur came about. And so we created through our sort of networks some locations around the world. And the idea is that these amateur riders, they apply, and if they're successful, they come to these competitions, they get given a borrowed horse, and they ride this borrowed horse for the event. So the only cost that they really have to fork out for is accommodation and a small entry fee, versus the transport of the horse like they would otherwise have to. So it's created a really amazing opportunity within the sport, and also a chance to connect cultures, connect people from other tongues and other countries. And I love that. I think that's such a beautiful thing to have, and it's so important that we understand how other people live and understand their backgrounds, and that people think and they act and they behave differently, and it's not because they are a better person or a worse person. It's just that's what they know, that's what they've been brought up in. And the more you travel and experience these cultures and these countries, the more appreciation you get for how other people live.
I totally agree with you. When I was a flight attendant many moons ago, and I travel around the world, that was the one thing I appreciated the most, is when you travel and you see all these things, first of all, you'd appreciate how good you had it, for a start.
Yes.
Sometimes we always
especially think, right now.
Yeah. Sometimes we always think, oh, the grass is always greener, but it totally is not. And it also, there was a scenario that happened one time which really made me, and kind of highlights what you just talked about, is we used to do lots of different flights, but the one that was the hardest physically and mentally was a flight from Australia to Hong Kong. It was the most demanding flight, and the aspect that people wanted things every 5 minutes. It was just every 5 minutes she'd be like, oh, I don't want that flight, because it was hard work. And I had this manager on the flight before the flight one day, and I'll forever be grateful for him, because he turned around and he said, this is going to be a demanding flight. You know that they are very, in their culture, they speak very loud, and they're always asking and asking and asking. And he said, I want you to understand why this happens. And we're all like, okay.
Yeah.
And he basically said, do you realize that in their culture, with hundreds and hundreds of thousands of them, it's who speaks the loudest gets what they need. They are not being rude to you. This is not personal. This is how they have been brought up. This is their culture. And you need to adjust your attitude towards it and just accept that that's what it is. And it was a really great lesson to learn, because sometimes, I don't know about you, but sometimes when someone does something to me and I look at them and go, wow, that's not cool.
Yeah.
When I can take a step back and think, well, they're coming from the place of, that's all they know. They don't know.
It's not personal.
Yeah. They're dealing with what their life experiences is, and they're treating me the way that they know how it is. And if I take it that way, it takes the sting out of it. It takes not feeling like I have to retaliate and stuff. So that's amazing.
And I had I had a similar experience in Russia, and I was lucky enough to go there a couple of years ago. Very unique country, but the first couple of days really threw me, because you know, it's customary in our country when we walk past someone, even if we don't know them, we smile, and sometimes we even say hi. Even if we know we're never going to see that person again. And so, you know, that's how I've been brought up. That's my culture. And when I went to Russia, I guess I just carried on with that, and I'd walk past people and I'd smile and I'd say, good morning. And I would get met with this, what I felt was like a hostile reaction, and, you know, no smile. And it got to a point where after a couple of days, I was so bothered by it, I actually Googled smiling in Russia.
Why?
Because I was like, I'm going insane. Like, is it me? Like, what is it? And believe it or not, there are dozens and dozens of articles on the internet about smiling in Russia.
Really? Wow.
I'm not alone. I'm not alone. But, you know, it comes down to the point that for them, smiling is seen as insincere unless you've got a really good reason to smile. And I think every day above ground is a good reason. But, you know, they've just been brought up differently. And so for them, it's not customary to smile, especially if you don't know that person. So yeah, I had to take a step back and learn from that. And once I did and I accepted it, it was fine. So
it would have been enjoyable. Isn't that interesting? I'm going to go, after we finish, I'm going to Google that.
Going to Google smiling in Russia.
That's not funny. I suppose you touched briefly on your scholarship and the aspect that you got that opportunity. Many people in your shoes will probably be thinking, I'm, you know, currently running a business, I'm doing this, I've, you know, got injuries on my back. How am I going to add more to my day? And you know what? There are a lot of people probably watching this right now going, wow, she upskilled, she did all of these things, but they're also currently working full-time or doing something else. They're going, how do I fit it in? If one of those people are watching right now, I don't know. I know for me, I'm really growth focused. So for me, I just find the time. But I also I understand that a lot of people think, I don't know how to fit something in.
Sure.
If you're watching now, if they were watching, what would you say to them? What made you actually say yes to you, that you made that time? How did you manage that?
Yeah, so there was a couple of things. And firstly, I'm going to say, you know, I totally understand those people that feel that, you know, I can't just quit my job right now. I don't have the courage to go in and start my own business. There's too much to risk. There's too much to lose. And I understand that and I get that. You don't necessarily have to start by doing that. And I didn't initially. I spent 3 years after university working in the corporate industry. That's how I met you. And, you know, that was I guess initially a means to an end.
Yeah.
If I'm going to be really honest, it was just get a full-time job until you figure out what it is that you're going to do next. And I was lucky enough to find myself in a job that I really enjoyed, and I learned a lot about, but I worked more or less 9 to 5. I had to fit in my horses and my riding also around that. And so there wasn't a lot of extra time in the day to do much else. But I read, when I was younger, I read a book that was talking about if you just dedicate 1 hour a day to learning about something, whatever it is, upskilling yourself in whatever area it is that you're passionate about, 1 hour a day, within 3 to 5 years, you will become a master in that. I loved that. And I was like, 1 hour a day, when you think about it, you think of all the mindless scrolling on social media that people do, and the little chunks of time here and there and there, and you add them all up, most of us can fit an hour into our day. If we really want to do it, we can. And so I would just try and clock that little bit of time, either at the start of the day or on my lunch break or after work, to just keep working on that plan and start to figure out what it was that I wanted with my own business, if that was where I was heading, or did I want to carry on in the industry that I was in. And then I think, ironically, I don't know if I've ever told you this, Kim, but it was the guest speaker at the annual Flight Centre conference who encouraged me to leave. And he doesn't know this. We didn't actually have a physical conversation where he said you need to leave. It was actually through his story when he talked to everyone, and he made a comment that stuck with me, and it's still stuck with me today. And I've actually got his book here. We'll talk about that later. Mike Olphert, he's a pilot for Air New Zealand, and he made the comment, if you're not constantly looking for the next challenge, you're not moving forwards. And it was at that point where I was sort of trying to decide, do I stay in what I know and what I'm comfortable and what I enjoy, or do I take that next step and really challenge myself and do something that I've wanted to do my whole life? And, as I sat there listening to him, I was like, he's telling me to leave. He's telling me to leave. And I literally handed in my resignation, I think, the following week. And yeah, never looked back. So sometimes you do have to really push yourself out of that comfort zone and take that step. And you don't always need to have, a 10-year plan. I think a lot of people get caught up in this 5-year plan, this 10-year plan. 12 months ago, none of us could have predicted the situation we're in now. No. And this is my point, and I've always said this, I don't even know what I'm doing next year. I don't know where next year is going to take me. But, if you're serious about starting your own business, make a bit of a plan, even if it's just an initial 12-month plan. Work out how you're going to fund it, work out the location, make a business model, talk to others, get advice, and then just go for it. And you're going to make mistakes, you're going to fail, but that's where the growth happens. And I would be lying if I said that I hadn't had multiple failures and mistakes, since launching my business. But all of it has, made me more resilient, I guess, and shaped me on the path to where I am today. And you always have a choice how you handle a situation. I think that's really important to take from, is that every time something comes your way, a challenge comes your way, you always have a choice how you respond to it. You sink or swim. So I don't see the point in sinking. It doesn't get me anywhere, and it doesn't grow me. So I look for the opportunities in those challenges and how I can learn from them.
I absolutely totally love that, because you know what, especially the part where you go, I don't know what I want to be. I'm 52 in November, and I keep pivoting all the time. I still don't know what I want to be or where I want to go. But the fact that you've hit it on the nail on the head is that as long as we're still looking, we're consistently working, putting time towards, we're writing down we're visualizing actually what we want, and then taking consistent daily action towards it. And if it changes, it changes, because you know,
Mm,
the more work we do on ourselves, we change, and we're no
yeah,
longer the same person. So then we go,
yeah.
you know what, I think I wanted that, but actually no, I don't. I want this now. And a lot of people, I found a lot of people get caught up in that, and they get caught up in
Mm,
the aspect that, oh, what will people think of me? I made a declaration,
mm,
I'm going to be this now. And now I'm changed my mind again. And
mm,
my message to those people, and I'm sure you will agree, is it doesn't matter. You got
no.
to go with what's in your heart, and the plan will unfold as you grow in your purpose and your gift will
Mm,
find when you're ready to find it. And you don't need to know
yeah.
what that is yet. You just need to be brave enough to take that first step and just do it.
And if we were all meant to be the same, you know, we would be.
How
But the
boring.
world would be, I mean, personally, I think the world would be a pretty boring place if everyone was the same. I think individuality is what makes us unique, and it's what makes life exciting. And we can take inspiration from others. We can take things that we like about those people, whether it's in their attitude or whether it's in their business. Or their just approach in general to life, and we can take those little things and try to apply them to ourselves if that's something that we feel you know, we want to do. But we don't need to be those people. And in fact, you know, once you start looking at your own strengths rather than comparing yourself to other people, you compare yourself to other people, you're only going to see your failures, because you're going to look at their strengths and you're going to see that, you know, you don't compare to those strengths, or that your failures, you'll focus more on those failures. But if you look at to those people and you go, okay, what is it that I really like about those people? Often it's their leadership, their integrity, that they do what they say they're going to do, that they're passionate, that they're hardworking. For me, those are the things that really draw me to people. People that follow through on what they're going to do, that have ambition, that are just dedicated. You know, so all the people that have inspired me in my life have not been couch potatoes. They've all been really driven people from really diverse backgrounds, but I've taken little bits of inspiration from all of them and then tried to integrate that into my own plan.
That's flippin' epic. So I have one last question for you today, and it's a question I ask all of my guests. And the question is, what do you have a book or an audio or some sort of activity that you do that helps you when you're right smack in a challenging time, actually bring you out of it and be able to then get back on doing, like you just said, living your best life?
Yeah, I've got a couple of strategies. So I might, if you don't mind, I might just touch on all of those. The first thing that I've really noticed with myself in the last couple of years is every time I find myself maybe heading towards a slump, and let's be honest, we all have those. I'm lucky that I haven't ever really gone into a big one, but I think one of the reasons for that is that every time I feel myself getting a little stressed or a little anxious or overworked or something, that I have these little signs that I recognize, and it's kind of like, all right, stop, breathe. What is it that you need to do right now to snap yourself out of that? Sometimes it's as simple as just going and taking myself for a coffee. And I remember my mum saying to me a few years ago, you can't afford to be buying yourself coffees every day, because she'd grown up in that older generation that was like, you know, you need to really budget, and you shouldn't be spending your money on all this. And I would say to mum, you know, if that $5 that I spent on that coffee is the difference between me going out and having an amazing day, giving 100%, and all my clients coming back and saying, wow, that was amazing, and they come back again and again and again because I'm giving them good service, then to me that $5 is the best $5 that I could have spent, versus not going and doing that, feeling miserable and, you know, losing business because of it. So whatever that looks like to you, you know, for me, it might be a coffee, it might be going and getting a massage, or it might just be going for a ride on my horse or a run in the mountains. I'm a little bit of an adventure bunny, so I get really excited when I have the chance to plan an adventure And it might even be just half a day. Or like last week, I went into Mount Cook. I'd never been there before. Went into the village, and we got caught in a blizzard and went swimming with, you know, icebergs, and it was just so magical and so crazy and bizarre at the same time. But it just re-energized me, and I came away from that and just had the best weekends of where I work weekends. My weekends are like Monday to Thursdays, and it just invigorated me. And so my advice would be, you know, everyone has little signs that when they start to get anxious or they start to, you know, get tired or run down, and if you can recognize those signs for yourself. Someone said to me the other day, she's actually a sports psychologist, she said when she gets stressed, she clenches her jaw and she clenches her bum. And so every time she notices herself doing that, she goes, okay, stop.
She must
That's
be
a sign. Yeah. And so, yeah, recognize that, and then just try and find something that you can do to get yourself out of it. I've bought a couple of books along because, so this High Altitude by Mike Olphert, he's the guy I was talking about earlier that really inspired me with his story. And I love books. I love autobiographies. So I've got a couple here that I haven't read yet, but Nathan Farvey, I think, from Nelson, and Steve Gurney, Lucky Legs, Bear Grylls. I love Bear Grylls. But basically, nothing gets me more excited than hearing other people's stories, and especially stories where they've had challenges and they've overcome them. So that might not be everyone's cup of tea, and I'm not saying that everyone needs to go out and start reading autobiographies, but that's something that I find really inspiring, is seeing those people, you know, they've overcome some pretty big things. What is it that they did to overcome those? And, you know, what can I learn from that? So
I love it. I'm gonna look up a couple of those books, because I'm like yourself, and 100%. Some days, especially with the joy of menopause, some days I'm woo, and then other days I'm yay.
Yeah.
And, for me,
yeah, I hear you.
I use music. Music's my thing, or nature's my thing. So everybody, there's something out there, and I love that you've said you just need to go out and find what's the one for you, because I know that there's so many people get confused.
Yes, I think music is very powerful. For sure.
Sorry, that's all right.
Say that again.
I said, because there's so much stigma around you must meditate, or you must do this, or you must do that, or you've got to do this to help. For me, I kind of like, you know what? You just go and find what's right for you. And you can try all of those things, and some of them are, but like your yoga experience, I'm not a yoga person either. It's too slow for me as well.
Yeah.
Look, you know what? I actually 100% believe that inside each and every one of us, we have what I like to call the resilience factor. And I honestly believe all we need to do is ignite that and take action on it. Yeah. And we can create the life that we desire. So I want to thank you so much for coming on today. You know what, guys? That's our episode of Coffee Chats with Impact. I hope that Lucy has inspired you, ignite you, and uplift.
And if you don't drink coffee, that's also okay.
Yeah, true. I'm just going to interrupt that, because I went to something the other day where everyone only drank cacao and I was the only one that drank coffee. It got really bad. I mean, I like cacao, love it, but I'm a coffee person. But you know what? I hope
definitely
it inspires you and makes you hungry to live the life that you desire or you deserve. Thank you, Lucy. I really appreciate that.
You're welcome.
I'm jealous you've got that beautiful snow in the background.
And it was snowing. It was snowing just before. I don't know if you noticed, but there's still like little wee snowflakes coming down. It's so exciting. The novelty still hasn't worn off yet.
No. So guys, take care. Thank you so much. And I'll look forward to seeing you on another episode of Coffee Chats with Impact.